Board of Adjustments, Tuesday, February 6th, 2024.
Get there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll call the meeting in order at 5:37, it looks like to me. And first thing on the agenda will be the Alder House application. And the way I read it, they want 2 more parking lots. 2 more, cut the max down 2 more so they can. And that'll be for the people that work there and live there. And if there's something more to that that I don't know about, but that's all I got out of this.
So the city requires a conditional use permit to have the multifamily housing within that same building, within an existing building in that zoning designation. And as far as, so that's the conditional use portion. As far as the variance portion, you're correct. They missed the mark on parking spaces by 2. And so they're asking for a variance to have 2 less than the city would normally require.
2 less.
And I thought I read 3. I thought they had to have 45 for that size of building and they only have 42 available.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
How did you come up with, I don't know where this right hand, but how did you come up with the 45? Because there's 35 units.
In that code, it describes how many you have to have per.
That was 1 per living unit.
Um,
But anyway, let's go
I-
ahead with your.
we have it all, I should have
Okay.
brought it all down there, but we, it was, it has to do with the,
Worker.
there was 1 car or 1 parking space for the studio apartments and 2, I think, for the 1 bedrooms.
Well, it says it's per SBMC 15.20.270 off-street parking and loading. Multifamily dwellings, 2 per dwelling unit, studio apartments, 1 per dwelling unit.
Yeah, so.
Well, to me, the people that are gonna live there are low income senior citizens. And how many of those people are gonna have more than 1 vehicle, if they have a vehicle at all? That's my opinion on that one.
And that's, why, the reason that the city is recommending approval of both of those. When parking codes are typically created, they're like the max amount of parking spaces that you would ever possibly need and so. So the city, because of that, also, the city thinks it's reasonable to have 3 less than.
Sounds reasonable to me. Yes,
I have a question.
yes.
If you approve that, is that going to affect other projects? Like the next one that's coming up?
Each project is on its own individual. Anybody can apply for just about anything.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. I don't know if you're gonna be setting precedents or not by adjusting.
Well,
it.
you're not really setting a precedent just because it's variance, the ability to get a variance is built into the code. So everybody has an opportunity to do that. That's why it's there. It doesn't mean it's always gonna be approved. But, each case is gonna have to be based on its own merit.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
I'd just
Rebecca.
like to say, this parking to me is a minor piece of this project. It's a really good project. That Alder House has been sitting empty for years. This project puts it back in operation, provides 35 senior housing units, completely remodels it, puts kitchens in every unit. They're spending over almost $5 million on upgrade. So compared to having it sit empty, the community was really outraged when, everybody got pushed out, and it's been hard to come up with a new use because the Department of Commerce had restrictions on the deed. And we can comply with those restrictions by keeping the incomes low and serving this population. So there weren't very many alternatives. So to me, this is a huge win for the community to get an investment of $5 million in that facility and put it back into use for senior housing. And for asking for less parking lots, I mean, and they're holding off on awarding the bids. They've gone out to bid, they've got a good contractor, they're ready to start it, but they're not signing the contract or the final purchase and sale agreement to make the transfer of the property to the JPCHA until we get this. So it's really important, you know, that we get this approval and move forward with the project. And for a request for 2 less parking spots, it just seems to me a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. My only question is, I mean, we're putting in a lot of resources into low income housing. What is low income for this kind? What are the parameters? Because we have a lot of seniors that are on the margins, right? They're not like poverty level low income, but they're not doing wonderful. Will they be able to get into this
Well,
housing?
The limits and the income limits are set by the state, so it's not, you know, I would love to have no limits and let people move in, but in order to get this funding, but the way I understand it, it's 30 to 80% of median. And median for a single, you probably know this by heart, but median for a single person is probably about 25, 30,000. So they would have an income between 30 and 80, that median income.
Who's subsidizing it? Is it HUD or RD tax credit?
They got funding through the State Housing Trust Fund. And they have really strict income limits. It's the same with the Wilpa Center, the Pearl, the
Right.
Pacific
Mhm.
Ways. You know, anytime you take advantage of that money, you have these housing income requirements.
They're just all different and their income limits are
It
different.
depends on the program, the population you're saying you're going to serve, but yeah, but they're all below the median income in some percentage. But a lot of them have then vouchers and rental assistance, you know, to help those people pay the rent too, so. You know, I think given the options, especially with this, with the deed restrictions to maintain that low income service, this was the only real path forward for that building.
Oh, I didn't realize that was in the deed, the
Yes,
restriction.
indeed. That's
Okay,
why the hospital quit, because they couldn't afford to operate it with just Medicaid patients.
right.
But the Department of Commerce refused to be flexible in removing that deed restriction.
Any more comments from the
So
public?
is it gonna be kind of like the low income apartments up there? And on Rolopa?
Well, that's
I mean,
family,
is it
that's
for
considered
multifamily
family,
As well, is this gonna be for multifamily? as
not if
well?
it's only studio and 1 bedroom.
It's years 55 and above. They're all,
Okay,
I think
okay,
there's
okay.
like 4 1-bedrooms and 31 studios. They're basically small units, so there'd be single seniors and all.
So it already says 55 and more.
Yeah, that's.
So it'd be more like the apartments.
No, it's 50. I don't know why, but 55 counts as senior in this.
No.
Okay.
Some places you can get in 10% at 50.
Right.
Any more comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the application for a variance on the parking area at the Alder House. Second,
Yeah.
approve.
Yeah.
It's unanimous. We approve the parking lot restriction, the Alder House.
And then you have one more on this one, it's the conditional use permit.
Well, I don't know anything about that.
So,
That's just to allow them to have the apartments in the building.
Why work on it if you're not gonna be,
That's why they haven't signed anything yet.
okay,
They have to get the conditional use approval first.
well, I'll entertain a motion that we approve that part of this variance also.
I second it.
2 seconds,
So who,
it's unanimous.
motion and second?
Okay.
Based on their most recent schedule, they hope to have it ready to occupy about exactly 1 year from now. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah, 24 studios and 11 one-bedrooms.
is that what it is?
Yeah. I knew it was in the paper, that I was looking for. I think that's a good use of the property.
I do.
Yeah.
It's nice to see some of these buildings not being vacant.
And we have such a housing shortage.
Yeah,
If they're vacant, they start to deteriorate, decline, this is bad. In my opinion.
It's nice to see something for the senior, you know, the low income senior people to have a place.
Yeah.
And it could open up housing for others.
and they're keeping those big open, communal areas, so I think that's kind of.
That's very
cool.
nice.
If you know, if you live there and there's a big area up on both floors with a piano and couches and people can so.
My grandmother lived in a place like that in Montana and she absolutely.
Well, Alder House was a godsend for this area for years.
Well, it was assisted care, but
Right.
they couldn't afford the assistance.
Yeah.
So this was decided to- Anyway, thank you. I might take off again, you guys.
Well, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
the next one we have is a proposal to streetaways to put mobile homes on a lot.
The variance would be reduction in size of the mobiles.
They want to place 2 15-foot by 16 single wide manufactured homes on existing 25 by 125-foot lots. With
Correct.
roughly a total square footage of 864 feet.
And the code requires that they're double wides. And which is why they're seeking a variance.
Well, to start with, I read through this and I'm wondering if they know which way they're going when they get here. They said to go off of 101, you go north. That puts you out in the old Alder Mill lot. But that's the way mine reads, but, any comments from anybody from the public?
You read my letter, I just want to read what I sent in.
Well,
That's my opinion.
I'd rather have you read it since it's your letter.
If you don't want to read, I'll read it for you.
That's right.
I don't mind reading.
You go.
Got her letter right there, Dawn?
Sure.
I'll read it for her.
And what's the name?
Carol Collins, new one.
This letter is dated January the 31st to the board. Dear board members, after reviewing the application submitted by La Central Holdings requesting a blanket variance from the provisions of the South Bend Municipal Court Code 15.20.230 manufactured homes to put in 2 single wide manufactured homes at 503 Monroe Street. According to his application, the applicant wants to reduce the size that is required and he wants a blanket variance. So he does not have to return to reapply when he puts the additional 9 units onto the property. First, this tells me that he is planning to construct a trailer park, which I strongly oppose in this neighborhood for several reasons. First, the city has at least 2 trailer parks in South Bend that are currently nothing more than an eyesore in their neighborhoods. The Gypsy Trailer Park at the end of Central Avenue started out as a nice mobile home park when it was first constructed. And by the name of Tim Taylor assured everyone that it would be strictly managed to make sure that it would be kept clean and orderly. It was until he decided to move out of town. It was sold and it became the mess it is today. It has lowered the value of homes that surround it. Then the H&H trailer park behind Chan's Motel has become another mess that you would be lucky to get a fire truck through if a fire broke out. Thankfully, both properties are either far enough from Highway 101 or partially obscured by shrubs. 2, this project in question can be seen from Highway 101 and will be one of the first things that tourists will see entering South Bend from the east. If it should end up like the other trailer parks, I believe that it will become a detrimental piece of property and will discourage tourism that the chamber and the city businesses have been working so hard to promote in the past several years. I do not believe this application meets the requirement for variance because it does not cause undue hardship for the land use of this particular property. The applicant could still construct 1, even 2 double-wide manufactured homes and still stay within the rules of the zoning ordinance. If granted, I feel that you would be granting a special privilege. The zoning ordinance was changed several years ago, requiring that manufactured units must be at least double wide to prevent this type of construction in a neighborhood district, mainly because of what has happened with the Gypsy Trailer Park. Granting a blanket variance leaves too much room for inconsistencies that may get overlooked. I believe that a project like this requires strict adherence to the rules of the zoning ordinance, and the city should be diligent in making sure that each unit is looked at closely. And 5, I believe that 11 trailers on this property will cause overcrowding. I am not saying that all mobile home parks are a disaster like the 2 I mentioned. But historically, the city does not address violations of the zoning ordinance unless it is complaint driven. Even then, the complaints are somewhat ignored. Unfortunately, this city has many properties that have become quite an eyesore because, as they admit, they do not have the workforce to fulfill the responsibilities necessary to enforce the rules. This did not happen overnight. It has been happening for years. Many neighborhoods have property owners who continually violate by having numerous derelict vehicles, motorhomes, boats, and miscellaneous debris scattered around their property. This often attracts rodents and wild animals, i.e. raccoons, which become a health hazard and drives down the value of the properties of those who strive to keep their properties looking nice. Please consider what potential harm this could cause for our neighborhood and the city as a whole. Patricia Bisbee attempted to construct a low-income building on the same piece of land, and the neighborhood residents expressed their concerns to the city, letting them know that they did not want a multi-residential project in this area. This trailer park may even be worse. Sincerely, Carol Clements, Newborn. Thank you for your letter.
So to address one thing on that, each lot has to be individually owned. It can't be ran as a trailer park. They have to be owned outright. Each tax parcel is its own parcel.
So that makes it even worse.
Well, it's not legal to have a trailer.
But and I think what Carol is trying to say is you might not physically be able to call it a trailer park, but it's gonna look like a trailer park. And if it's individually owned, then there's absolutely no control on keeping them up, you know. Sure, you go by the place by Bud's and look at those trailers in there. I mean, there's mold and moss growing on them. They're not even cleaning them.
Sure.
So, you know, by the way, my name's Kevin Funkhauser, and I live across the street from this parcel of land that we're talking about. And I'm a firm believer that if you own a chunk of land, I don't like it when people can tell me what I can do and what I can't do on my land. So I'm not here to raise a stink about it. I'm concerned. One is probably Dennis can answer it, the drainage system. The other part is a trailer park, and the variance. You know, we stopped single wide trailers for a reason. So why would we give them a variance to start doing it again?
Well, I'm, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, right? I just put this together and, variances are in the code for that purpose.
Well, I'm sure they are, just like you said, there's variances for every code, but, I mean, there's a reason why the city of South Bend did not want single wide trailers here anymore. So, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. Why would you give them a variance to start doing that again? What's the city gonna gain out of it? What's the community gonna gain?
The only real gain out of it is, tax base and, affordable housing.
So why were they saying here that they haven't decided if they're gonna put two on the lot first, but they don't know if they're gonna rent or sell them?
And then, I
So
have,
it's like,
I have one other,
okay.
I have one other question for each one of you. And there again, I'm not here to try and raise a stink. I just want an honest opinion. If you lived in the property next door, would you want that next to you?
It's gonna depend on the time of what it is.
I have a concern. Plain and simple, I did look up because, single wide trailers have a history of deteriorating very quickly. And when I Googled it, it said they're built now according to HUD specifications, they should last 50 to 60 years. So I thought, well, that's a better thing. I liked the design as far as how they have the middle section for people, like hopefully kids would play. I'm concerned it's on a very busy corner right next to the highway. I thought that could be a safety concern. Because we're talking low income, I see families in there,
Right.
lots of kids. And to me, I felt like that could be a concern.
So we are talking low income on this?
I don't know. That's what he's, we're
No, I,
talking whoever wants to buy one, but he said affordable housing, not low income,
So,
affordable housing.
But Don, I throw the same question to you. If you own this property and lived right next to it, would you want basically a trailer park put in next to you?
You gotta ask.
So, Linda? No. So, I mean, you know, I think I'm the closest one here that lives the closest to that property, and I certainly don't want it. Not just for me, for a lot of the reasons that Susie brought up, that, you know, I love kids. I have nothing against kids, but that is a dangerous area, that is a busy road.
Especially if they're gonna, they said 3 entrances into the, I mean, there's gonna be cars going which way and kids and.
I just don't think
They won't have to.
if you wanted to
So,
build all the more.
so I have a lot of concern.
Marijuana.
I have a lot of concern on this bill because I'm on the corner of Quincy and Montana. And according to this application, entrance is going to be off of Montana, meaning the road between myself and the port. And they're proposing 11 trailers or 11 modular homes. So I looked up this property on the tax sifter and it says it's 11 lots of 25 by 125. So my question though is, according to the city, when I had planted some trees on my property, the city has an easement from the center of the road in 25 feet and possibly 50. That's just off of Montana. There's also that same easement that's off of Monroe and the same easement that's off of Oregon. So right there, you've reduced those lots from 125 feet to 75 feet buildable.
That's
So-
not necessarily true. There's a right of way and they have specific widths. I think Montana's an 80-footer. So it's not basically 25 foot in
So
or
it's
anything
80
like
feet?
that.
So Dennis, are you telling me it's 80 feet from the center line in?
No, total.
From where to where? Where is that 80 feet?
Well, a survey would show where the 80 foot's at, but that would be the total. And it may be 60. I'm not 100% sure.
All I know is when Dale Little or Dale from the planning office there or whatever in the city as soon as Chuck, my neighbor behind me, right next to the property, steps on his porch, he's in city property. He's in city right away.
Yeah, so.
And that could be, I'd have to look at it and see, but, yeah, it's not necessarily a 25 foot from the center. It's based off a survey.
It's an 80 footer.
So-
Is it 80?
So even, okay, and I'm just saying, at 80 feet, they told me it went to the center of my yard, almost, 2 lot size, 225 lots. So again, even so, you've got that on 3 sides. So where does 125 feet come in for them to be able to utilize? They can't.
It does. It's platted that way. So if you own 2 lots that are 25 by 125, then you own 150 by 125, minus the right of ways. So it all plats out.
Well, I'm just saying, according to what was shown to me, that it was right there off of our Montana, there's that 80 feet. So that even right there, or even 40 feet, brings it down to like
No, it
75
doesn't bring
feet.
it down, because the end of the right of way is where your property starts. So it would be 80 foot, or say 40 foot from center. If it's an 80 foot total, your property would start from that 40 foot or 80 foot, wherever you want to call it. And then it would continue on 120 feet from there. That would be, so whatever you're platted, that would be what your deed shows.
Okay, so again, what I'm saying is, the way it was shown to me, that there's 2 streets, it's got that in there. So those lots really aren't 25 by 125, unless the property is really 175 feet in the length, by what you're saying. So that's one of my concerns. 2 is, of course, the traffic going in there. And again, it's saying according to this application, that they also need to have 20 feet in the front of them for a yard, 10 feet in the back, and only 5 feet between the 2 of them. So even with a 15-foot wide modular, that's 5 feet later, you're going to have another, 15 foot, 5 feet. I don't see how they can fit all of them on the lot.
Can you have a 5 foot between?
That's what it is right now, it's 5-foot setback, so if you looked at this, you got 5 on one side, 5 on the other, and so it's 10 between the house. Overall.
Each piece of property will have 5.
So there's 10 feet between you.
Yeah, that's
Which
fire.
isn't.
That's fire
nothing.
code.
Yeah.
That piece of property is ideal for business if we ever get any here. It's right on the highway.
It's in a commercial zone.
It's,
That's not a commercial zone.
they rezoned it because originally they were going to build apartments there. And then with interest rates and all the things, it wasn't feasible financially to do it anymore. They had the approval from a rezone and a comp plan amendment to
So-
allow it.
So
Was
one-
there.
One other issue that I have is, and I know you guys don't have any control other than this part. The county came in and reassessed my property. I bought the house for $179,000. I did some minor work on it. I put a shop on it. I put a new fence on it. This year they came in and assessed my value at $472,000. Now, 3/4 of that house was built in 1909. Do you think I could ever sell that house for $472,000 where it's at? No. And if a trailer park goes in there, there's no way I would get $300,000 for that piece of property and my house.
The house next door to you.
I mean, yeah, I've got a rundown trailer right next door to me already. I've got a house behind me that was a drug house. I mean, it's crazy. And I just don't see where we are going to, gain anything by doing this at all. I think it's a very bad idea.
The wrong project.
I
Another
City bent the
Another question.
changed the rules a while back for housing or apartment. Nobody seemed to object to that, an apartment house.
Well, there was some.
But we did.
on
But
that.
we did. We did. Unfortunately, the meetings were held via Zoom at noon,
I can't.
at 12 o'clock.
One time,
Just 1 second, Joyce, let Kevin finish and then you can speak.
There was some objections on that one specific project when Trish sold and was gonna, have an apartment put in there, and there was some big concerns about where all the water was gonna go. We had some bad flooding in that area. Not as bad as down by the school, but it has been that way in the past. And you put, a big apartment in there like that, that's a lot of water that's gotta go somewhere, other than just right into the ground where it's falling.
not gonna.
We were
down
reassured.
there.
We were reassured that there was gonna be proper drainage and all that put in with that project. We were also told that there would be a fence all the way around that project. Which there again, like I said, I don't like to raise a stink about somebody wanting to do something and develop on their property. They should have the right to do that, but I don't think a trailer park is right. I didn't think the apartment was right, but I did not say no on it. I just wanted to make sure that some of these other concerns were addressed before the project, I wanted to see it in writing that these concerns were gonna be addressed.
Joyce, did you have something else?
Well, one of the things I saw too is in the staff analysis that there are existing within the same zone district, single wide manufactured homes at this time. So just out of curiosity, where are those manufactured single wide homes?
Where are they?
In that same area.
Sure, along the flats. They're not all glued together, but you can drive through the flats and see.
Oh, yeah, I got one across from me there.
Yeah, there's some down by the school. I mean, they're around.
But I think some of those basically have been grandfathered in, because they had been there before that
Yeah.
variance was changed.
And I understand that.
And I think that if those were ever tore down, you can't just pull that out and put another one in.
Yeah,
So-
no, without variance, you couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there should be some wording in there that those were grandfathered in and they can't be replaced.
Well, they may be able to be replaced, actually.
If they go through this process.
Well, no, because I'd have to dig deeper into the code, but typically, if you replace in like,
With
Like for like. Yeah, then you would be able to do that. But that's neither here nor there. We gotta look at this project.
So my other question is, and maybe some of the codes have changed, when I built my shop there, the county told me I had to go 12 feet above sea level. The city said I had to go 11. Is there any codes on that? Are they gonna be raising that land up?
Yeah, there is a code on that. It's the flood level, and it's basically the 11-foot mark that you're talking about, and that's what FEMA's required. So that's what the city does now.
A huge concern with all the water. It's gonna push water somewhere.
I really have to pump.
Right, and I wasn't sure if they were gonna raise the land or just put the trailers up in the air on a foundation, raise the foundation.
I think Dennis, you can probably answer that, but I think the land has to be raised.
Typically, yeah, it's because you have to have the fall away for the runoff and all that stuff. But
Still, it's 11 feet up and say, okay, we're above the
I think
floodplain.
11
It's-
feet.
Right down Central Street, here about 3 years ago, the Historical Society bought a lot. And we bought the house and lots, but we wanted to put a storage building on there. We had to fill that about 2 feet to make it legal. So I'm sure you'd have to fill that area up there because it's just low also.
Oh,
How
yeah.
did that affect the neighboring properties then?
Negatively, because
Uh-huh.
I know from my personal, we were on a knoll when when the house was built where I live. And it is now lower because
Yeah.
everything has to keep following, everything gets raised up, the roads or whatever. And
I'm sinking.
Yeah.
And I have to pump. I have a pump in the house, pump
Yeah.
water out. Time. It's like- And Tricia.
Well, I,
came to stay in between next door, and she was gonna build something there, but she wouldn't put a drain in. They were gonna demand that she puts a drain in, but she didn't wanna do it, so it's still sitting there.
And even putting the right drains in, Dennis, this was another one you could probably answer. I know our pump station right down at the end of that road, they have problems with that, and I mean, when we get an overabundance of water, that pump station can't keep up as it is. Isn't that correct, Dennis?
It'll keep up, but there's there's other factors that roll into that. You know, there's some plugs that we end up, because everything flushes out and we end up with plug pipes and stuff. So
Well, I've
there's other
seen
factors, but
crews had to be down there because it was not keeping up. And that's what I was told, that the pump was not keeping up with the
was that
amount.
one of those 8-inch in 24-hour times?
It might have been, but I mean,
Yeah. But then that's possible unless everything was open ditch like it used to be, you know, in the past. Water had somewhere to go, but now everything, you know, everybody's wanting to cover their properties and have access to everything, and all the open ditches are pretty much non-existent anymore. So it constrains all the storm water.
Then how come, like Carol's property's flooding all the time? They
What's
put it-
that?
When Rocky was here, they put in a swale, but it didn't do any good. Her property's flooding all the time when it rains and stuff.
Gets worse every year. When it rains bad, my whole lawn stands in
Because
water.
before you, this is before you, they allowed Jimmy Barnum to fill that property next to her, and everything started running off on her property.
Yeah, that's not legal. I mean, you can't force your runoff onto somebody else's property, and that just they have to
Happened.
mitigate that.
Rocky put in a swale, but it didn't work. It's still flooding.
maybe that's something that you could take a look at, Dennis, and help us down there in that area.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Well, we
As
should-
far as open ditching, or what are we talking here, or just mitigating the water issue?
I think we beat this horse bad enough already.
Yeah, we need to
We
get,
need to go back to what
Yeah,
the
case in.
variance of the shoreline homes.
Well, but that was part of it is the water issue. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That's a big concern for me. I
I'm
mean,
sure.
I've spoke my opinion, and it's up to you guys, I guess.
Anyway,
well, if I could put in something. I had Rocky come at my property because I had to have mandatory flood insurance because of the area there in the flats. And it was a 12-foot height and I was at 11 and a half. So I still had to carry the flood insurance. Then they repaved the storage unit higher. And so all the runoff now comes into my yard. And I had to put in a French drain to get over to the drain. So they raised the tarmac up there, so water drains my way. I just have a feeling that that property is not at the height level to meet for a flood requirement according to the federal. It had to be at 12 feet above flood level.
well, again,
So
back to
if I'm at 11 and a half, they're probably at 11 and a half.
okay, I'm ready for a vote. Sue, anybody, I'll entertain a motion that we reject this variance.
I'll second it.
Well, somebody needs to
Second.
make the motion.
Oh, Don did make the motion.
No, he's entertaining,
Yeah.
so somebody needs to make a
Wait,
motion.
entertaining. I will make the motion that we reject it because I don't think we have enough information to know the impact to the neighborhood for flooding issues. If the ground has to be raised so far, what's that gonna do to the surrounding area? Is there gonna be a fence put up so that it's not a trailer park? And, you know, I'm concerned about people, tourists coming in just the same as saying a trailer park when they enter into town. So I vote that we reject it. I make a motion that we reject it.
I'll second.
Moved and second that we reject this variance application. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
I don't. Not my, not my.
So nothing else, you can adjourn. If there's nothing else, then you can adjourn the meeting.
Okay. You guys out in the public through talking?
Thank you.
Okay, meeting's adjourned at 6:18.